Welcome back, friends. It's a year since the big repair on the engine on this Ecoboost Focus. I've become very fond of it. I've done a few thousand miles. My son's driven it quite a lot, and it's a great little car. Lots of people have doubted the repair, but it's lasted a year, a few thousand miles, and runs beautifully. It's a powerful car, really nice to drive, and has a few nice features like this windscreen de-icing, which is brilliant. So what I have to do is get it back inside. I'm going to do an inspection on the belt, but the cunning idea is to take the sump off, because that will then allow me to do two things: inspect the belt and inspect the strainer, the oil strainer, which is they're prone to getting clogged with little bits of belt and little bits of muck in general. So look at this. How about that? Takes it all off. It's brilliant. No need for scraping a windscreen. So beautiful car, powerful, engine's great. It's just started snowing. It's going to snow hard, so I'm hurrying now to get it indoors before things get more difficult with the snow. Here we are, back inside, just in the nick of time before the snow. What I was going to do, the car's due its annual MOT test. That's come back around. It's run fine for the past year. I've put quite a few miles on it, and I had planned to take the rocker cover off here and have a look at the belt. But what I decided to do, look at that lovely clean coolant still, nice. What I've decided to do is take the sump off instead, which will allow me to check the oil pump strainer, which is a possible issue with these engines, because it can get clogged up and you start to suffer from low oil pressure. So, and that will allow me to look at the belts, both belts, including the oil pump belt. So it kind of kills two birds with one stone. One or two other jobs to do before the MOT. The horn's not working. It's hidden here under this wing, and I managed to break the washer bottle sensor, so it tells me constantly that it has low washer fluid, even though it's not. So I'll do those, give the car a general service and get it ready for its MOT. But first thing, I'll do the sump and hope that I'm not going to regret what I find. Now I've got the underbody cover off, and here's our sump. It's only held on by a few bolts around, but obviously there's things in the way which will stop you just getting it off. This aircon compressor has to be slackened off and supported. It has to be unbolted and supported. That's not a big deal, but the exhaust's in the way, and I think normally you have to remove the whole front section of the exhaust, including the cat. But last year, when I took it for its MOT, this exhaust flexi was slightly cracked, and it passed the MOT, but it was an advisory. So in the end, there was a bit of noise from it. So in the end, I bought this repair section. So you have to cut through the pipe here, and then this section with the flexi just bolts in. It's really nice, beautifully made, and not very expensive. But yeah, cutting through that pipe was a hell of a job, because you've got no room behind it. So I was there with a hacksaw blade just trying to cut it, but once it was in, it's good. So I can easily remove that section. I'm not sure if that'll be enough to allow me to leave this piece, the front piece, in place. We'll see. Other than that, it doesn't look too bad a job. We'll see. First job, drain the oil, and I'm going to just look into what I'm going to have to do with the exhaust. There, get the compressor belt off. So T35 in there, release the tensioner, and just pop this belt off. That's all we need to do. We can just leave it hanging about. That's it. You can see here that's some of the sealant from on the sump join. so that's what we'll have to replace once we'll have to clean it off and then replace it when we're done. Now 3 bolts holding the compressor in. I've got a strap round it to hold the weight. I've got all the bolts just slackened, so you don't have to take the pipes off. Allegedly you're meant to take off the connectors, or the electrical connectors there, although I'm not sure I see the point. I'll see if I can get away with not doing it. Just leave that there. But yeah, it's quite a heavy unit, so you don't just want it hanging on its pipes. And you certainly wouldn't want it hanging on the wires. So that's 2 out. The other one's just in use. There, that's the bolts out. Took a little bit of prizing the compressor away, but that's all good. Just going to leave the bolts in actually. So it's supported with a strap. It's got its hoses as well. But yeah, it all looks pretty good. Just needs to be far enough out of the way to get the sump off, so that's fine. That'll be a fine hanging there. So 17 bolts to remove, and you remove them in the reverse order of how you're meant to do them up and torque them up. Now, I'm pretty confident that I'm not going to be able to get this sump off without taking off the cat pipe, or rather swinging it out the way, but you can dream. So I'm going to dream that I might be able to get it off, because we're missing this piece of pipe. Maybe just be able to get it out, but seems unlikely. So I'm taking these off, numbering them as I go, because they're different lengths, different sizes. Get all these bolts out, and then we can prise the sump off. So down to the last bolt. These are easy to get out. They're barely even hand tight. In fact, one of them was pretty loose. And the sump's not about to fall off because it's held on with the sealant. And what we'll have to do is carefully prise at it somehow. Let's see if we can just ease it away. There's dire warnings about not putting anything in the slots, not slotting anything underneath, and damaging the mating face. Well, it's not that hard to break the bead. Nice and all loose here. Just work your way around and prise it loose. But there's definitely no way this sump's coming off without taking this exhaust pipe out of the way, taking the cap out of the way. I think, although I'm usually wrong, I think I'll be able to just take the covers off, undo the bolts and swing it forward without actually removing it and having to take the sensors off. I think I can get away with that, but we'll see. So I'll get all that loosened off, and then we'll get the sump off. Okay, it's not so bad. I've taken off, there's just a few bolts hold the heat shield in place, so taking that off, and then I'll just have to undo the 4 bolts here, 4 mating bolts, and I'll be able to swing this pipe out of the way, so not so bad. Now just slackening this off. So I've just pulled the heat shield as far as I can out the way, just avoiding taking off the taking off any wiring or sensors. I just want to get this loose enough to swing out of the way. I'm going to leave that guy in place. The other ones are loose, still to come out. Alright, so whoever wrote the manual clearly hadn't taken one of these catalytic converters out, because there's extra bolts you have to undo. There's a bracket down underneath which has one bolt in it, which is actually easy enough to get out once you figure out where it is, and then there's a couple of little bolts here on the rear heat shield. They have to come out, and I think after that it might be free. So there we are, swinging free now, and so it's just got the one nut holding it in on the turbo. I think that's far enough back for it to not be in the way. Just tie that back there. And there is this, so there was a bracket in here with a bolt there, so there's another bolt holds us in there, which took a little bit of finding, but that's all dealt with. So next thing to get the sump off. Now, I'm hoping this exhaust isn't going to be in the way. I think it's okay. I should just be able to drop this. Moment of truth. There we are. Nice. Bring a bit of gasket with us. There we are. There. The important thing is for the strainer to be clear. This strainer to be clear of bits of metal. It looks to be completely clean. I'll have a proper look at it, but I'm not seeing anything in there at all. Okay. Alright, I've wiped up a little bit of the drippy stuff, and let's have a look at this strainer here. So there is a little bit of debris in there. Not very much, certainly not blocking it, but there's little bits and pieces. So I'll definitely give that a good clean, and also once I've got it out I'll just try and determine what it is. I'm assuming it's little teeny bits of rubber, but there's not exactly much there. So we've got to take that cover off there, off the oil pump, and then that will allow us to have a look at the belts. But yeah, so far so good. Alright, not an easy thing to see in here, but you can see the belt, you can see both belts, and there is a little gap that you can look through and see the teeth of the belt. So I've had it round several times, loads of times, and had a really good look at the belt. You can see that's the original belt, obviously, and also the markings are still on, despite the fact that it's been over the idler pulley millions of times. And in fact it's been this belt's gone round tens of millions of times since I did the repair last year without changing the belt. The oil pump belt looks perfect, and No reason to think there's anything wrong with that. So as far as I can see, the belt's still absolutely fine. And I looked carefully at the area that had been off when I did the repair last year, and it all looks fine. So I'm pretty happy. Not much more that you can do. I mean, it's meant to be a lifetime belt. It looks fine. The worst thing for these belts seems to be if you ever use the wrong oil or flush with any kind of flushing stuff or a flushing oil, then it degrades the belt. But there's just nothing to see. There's nothing but a few tiny little pieces in the strainer. I'm going to look at the oil as well carefully that I took out. But yeah, so far so good. Now I'm going to spend some time carefully cleaning things up, also looking for any debris. It might be in the sump or in the engine, in the used engine oil. These are, might look like muck in there, but it's just casting marks. It's all solid. So there's no debris in the bottom of this. Don't think there's anything in the oil. So I'm going to have to clean off all the old gasket, which is going to take a little bit of effort, but it should be alright. So I've put all the oil through it now. This is so the sump oil's gone through as well. Nothing much there. It's just one or two little gritty bits. What's this? Not a bit of belt anyway. It's just something hard. There's really nothing there. Nothing at all. So that's all the oil out of the sump, and so all the oil from when I drained the sump and all the oil from the sump. There's nothing in it. Really nothing in it. But I've still got to pick the stuff out of the strainer, and we'll see what's there. The strainer is pretty clean, and it's not easy to film here, but there's one or two little bits. I'm getting in there with the tweezers, see if I can just pick this thing out. What is this? Something. Just a little bit of, that is a piece of, I'm going to collect all these, but that's a little piece of gasket rubber. So that's from when I presumably from when I did the repair. I'm guessing that's probably what all the other stuff in the strainer is, but I'm going to pick stuff out, I'm going to give it a thorough clean, and then we can assess what's in there. Nothing much though. So I don't know if there's a clever way to do this, but I've got alcohol cleaner here. I'm just going to catch anything that falls out, and then I can have a look through it afterwards. I don't want to do anything to compromise the oil, and as I said before, you have to be very careful not to do anything that's going to degrade the belts, but this alcohol will dry out of it, so without any other ideas, this should do. We just give it a really thorough wash. and then let the stuff drip out, and I'll give it a dry as well. There's not really anything blocking the strainer as far as I can see. Get right into the far corner there. Anyway, I'll keep going at this, I'll have a really good look at it and then get it dry. I'm seeming to find a lump or two kicking about in here. Yeah, we've got lumps of stuff. I've got this thing that I can put a cotton bud in, which is kind of handy. Yeah, some bits of gunge, definitely. They're not obvious when you're flushing, but yeah, it's definitely stuff sitting in there. Look, yuck. Well, I'll keep on cleaning this stuff out and then I'll give it a wash and see what we've got. Now, the strainer's as clean as you could possibly get. You can get your little finger right in there and feel around for anything. I've given it as much of a clean and as much of a clean out as I can. So I did put that cover back on, the belt cover back on before I started this. Got to keep the belt clean, and that's all I can do here. So the real fun job now is getting the old gasket off. I've got some silicone sealant remover onto the sump mating face. I'm just letting that soak in. I've got to pull off as much of this as I can, and then I'll probably use sealant remover on this as well. Not the easiest stuff to get off, but we'll get there with it somehow. While little drips of oil rain down on us. Now this is all that's left out of the strainer. So little bits, that's a piece of rubber, that's a piece of rubber gasket that's must have got into the engine when I did the last repair. So that was in the strainer. It's a little sort of fibrey bit there. I don't know what this red paint stuff is. Maybe that's some kind of gasket. But it looks like it's mainly bits of rubbery gasket. None of that is belt. None of that is belt. Some little bits that look like glue of some kind. And one or two tiny little metal chips. I don't know if that's metal or not. I've got a magnet here. No. None of this is metal. No, none of it. So there's no metal chips in there at all. Of course, stuff could have dropped out and gone out with engine oil when oil's been changed, but that's all that was in there. So there's definitely nothing come off the belt at all and got stuck in the strainer. It's an interesting thing though. It just does show that anything that you drop into the engine, and I'm going to have to be really careful when I'm scraping this to then afterwards make sure I get everything out that drops into the sump, because basically any big things won't make it out of the sump. They'll just end up stuck in the strainer. So I'm giving this a scrape. This piece of copper, and you're warned not to scrape at it with anything hard because it'll put scratches into it. I'm going to get off all the worst of it. This has been soaking with a bit of silicone sealant remover, so it's gone all soft, it's coming off easily. And then I will I've already had a scrape at the bottom of the block, and I'll have a go at that as well, get that nice and clean, and then I will give it a little sand with some emery paper just to polish it up, get every last bit off. It's going to take a little while, but we'll get there. Alright, scraped the load off. This silicone remover says to clean up afterwards with a solvent like such as meths, so that's ideal. Do that. Also gives us something to rub with. Get a little block for that. Cleaning up hasn't been too bad, it's been okay. Silicone came off easy enough. Not looking forward to getting underneath and doing the final cleaning there, but it should be okay. Before I put the gasket on, I'll give both surfaces a further clean. Just in case any oil or grease has got on these surfaces. Nearly there. And I don't want any little bits going in if I can help it. Great. I'll just polish that up a wee bit more and we'll be done. Okay, so we're now at the point of putting the sump back on, and I'm applying the sealant. So I've cleaned the sump mating face and the mating face on the bottom of the block. I've given them both another clean with thinners, and that's dry. Well, it dries instantly, and I'm going to crack on before any more oil runs down the block and spreads out over the sump face. So this is the sealant. It's this what I'm using is this 3-bond 1207B, which seems to be a popular choice. It's not Ford's specified sealant, but it's widely used. So it says apply a 3 to 4 mil bead. Now, of course, you could apply this to the block, but you're against gravity doing that, and that would be a challenge. So, so this is really a gap filler, like any gasket. And certainly when I used this on the head, it fine. You gotta love a good old-fashioned gasket, but they're not perfect either. Right, fine. Okay, there's a bead all the way around. It's gonna work. When obviously when it gets bolted up, it's going to squelch out nicely. So we should be okay. Now I've had a last look to make sure, absolutely sure, that there is no oil on the mating surface. And now, really slowly, I'm going to bring this up, because it has to just go on perfectly straight into the right place, otherwise right, if we slide up like that, that is in the right place. Going up. That's on its pegs. That's it. There we are. Great. Get a couple of the bolts in. I had a bit of a sort out of the bolts. To be absolutely certain that I'd got them all, because they're all well, there's several different lengths. One on that side, one on the other side. Okay, so I'll get all the bolts in, get them tightened up and torqued, and we're all good. So, all bolts in, all torqued up. Now, torque actually, for all this, is quite a light setting. It's a little tighter than I thought it would be. Certainly tighter than it was when I was taking them off. And so these ones, so I've been round once already, and twice already. And then there's these ones here, these two M8s, which go into the gearbox. They have to be torqued up to a tighter torque, higher torque, because they're obviously they're bigger bolts. So I'll do them next. Yeah, so that's all of the little bolts torqued up, and that's these two big ones. That's it. Good. There we are, sump all finished. So it's a matter of getting the exhaust back on and all those fittings sorted out, and then getting the exhaust repair section back in, and that's nearly good to go. Excellent. Here we are then. It's just a nuts and bolts job really, getting everything back together. So sump's back on. Aircon compressors back on, cat section of the exhaust all back on, and all the heat shields fitted, the repair section for the flexies back in, that's all good. Got the belt back on at the front, so we're no better or worse off than we were before we started, except that I now have had a good look at the belts. I'm very happy with the condition of them. No sign of any deterioration of either belt, which is brilliant. So hopefully it really is going to be more or less a lifetime belt. I've certainly no plans to change it, and all I need to do now is fill the oil back up. And I've already changed it. I changed the filter right at the start, so new filter's on. Fill it with oil, and we're good to go. I've got a couple of other wee jobs to do for the MOT test. Get the horn working and general service. So brilliant. I'm pleased with that. It was a bit of a time-consuming job, but not too hard. So well worth the effort. So there it is. Sounding good. It's no longer telling me that I've got low windscreen fluid because I fixed the sensor. It was just a bit gunged up. Also fixed the horn. Great. And everything else is good. So all we've really achieved is an oil change, but at the same time I've checked both belts. I've shown there that you can inspect both belts by taking the sump off. The biggest nuisance is the exhaust really in the way, but you can inspect both belts. I'm very happy with the condition of them, so it's a slightly better inspection than taking the rocker cover off, because at least you can see the oil pump belt. So another job that's well within most people's range, and the car's all ready for its test now. So a little final conclusion here. I started more than a year ago with a badly broken car with the warped head, and that had been due to coolant loss. So I fixed that. That was the previous video. I've always been a little bit nervous about how the belts would be after that repair. It always drove fine. So this time I took the sump off, had a good look at the belts, and I see no sign of any deterioration, certainly since last year. And the filter, the screen on the oil pump was not blocked up either. Those are the things you hear about. What I think must be happening with people is that they must be using the wrong oil, probably. It's absolutely crucial that you only use the right oil with these engines. The Ford spec 520 oil, and you service it properly, change it at the right intervals, and then it's more or less a lifetime belt. I think that's the way it seems. So I think we've got a bit of life left in this. Maybe one day it'll go bang, but in the meantime we're okay. I've really grown fond of this car. It's nice to drive, good performance, good economy. If you accept the fact that it's a little bit of a flawed engine, it's still a nice thing. Don't love lying underneath it, but hopefully I don't have to do that very often.